Hey, welcome back to Music Theory Logic. My name's Andrew, and today's another Music Theory Breakdown. Today we're talking about the hit record by Doja Cat, Kiss Me More, featuring SZA. Let's go ahead into the Logic session. So here we are in my recreation of this track. If you haven't seen a Music Theory Breakdown before, I'm not going to play the original audio. That's because I don't have the rights to this original song. If I did, I'd probably have Doja Cat and SZA with me and their producers talking about the song. Hopefully, one day that'll happen, so make sure you hit the subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you can help me move up and perhaps eventually get to actually interview these artists about how they made the track. So in the meantime, I'm going to play you my rendition of the track. I've created every instrument on its own. Some of this is MIDI, some of this is live bass and guitar that I've recorded. After we listen to a smaller section of this instrumental, I'm going to talk about where the notes come from, the chords used in the song. Without further ado, here's my rendition of Kiss Me More by Doja Cat featuring SZA. Here we go. Cool. So that gives us enough to talk about each section of the song. This is the audio from the song. Obviously, it's a lot longer, but the sections repeat and the vocals change. And since I don't have any vocals, I didn't want to bore you by playing that section. So let's go ahead into our music theory. Music theory is a fancy way of saying what chords and scale, what are the notes doing, how are they interacting. This song is in the key of C sharp major. Now, that is kind of a doozy, if you will, of a key because it has every black key possible. That is all of the black keys you see on your keyboard. Another way of thinking about C sharp major is it's the exact same scale as all the white keys, C major. I take this all and drag it down one. These are all white key scales. So from C to C is C major. So C major has all white keys. C sharp major, again, a little confusing. The notes in C sharp major are C sharp, D sharp, E sharp. Even though it's F, we call it E sharp. Then F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, back to C sharp. So even though that's a C, we call that B sharp. So this has two enharmonics. Enharmonic is a really fancy way of saying two notes that we could call two different things, and we call them sort of strange versions of them. So what I'm trying to say is that this note is F, but we're going to call it E sharp because it's our version of E in the scale. This note is C, but we're going to call it B sharp. Once again, C sharp major's kind of confusing to think about just because of the way we name all of these notes. The reason we're going to call this E sharp and B sharp, even though it's F and C, is because we have this rule with scales that we're going to have one of every letter. And that actually becomes really helpful the further you get in all this music theory stuff. And if you're trying to think of the notes in any scale, you could start by all of the letters, because again, that rule makes it so that every scale, regardless of G sharp, minor, C sharp, major, F minor, they're all going to have a version of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, our musical alphabet. Cool. So the chord progression here is really like the sophisticated part of the song. The sound design is also really cool, but this song is going to give us a chance to talk about secondary dominants, and I'll even do a breakout video about that. So the fundamental chord progression sounds like this. And basically what's happening is this is a minor 6, so a B flat minor chord. It's a minor 7th, so this is built on this note, 6th scale degree. Again, a minor 7th harmony. So we get a B minor 7th. Then we get an E flat or D sharp dominant 7. Now, this chord is not in our key. Notice it has this note G. We don't have that. So where does this chord come from? This chord is borrowed from the 5 chord in C sharp major. That is the G sharp major. And it's our next chord. So we go to a G sharp major 7 here. Now, one interesting thing is that we're using that same note that we had before because we're not actually doing a G sharp dominant 7th, which would be the chord in the key. So all this to be said that these borrowed chords really produce a chord progression that feels a lot more jazz influenced or R&B, and that's something that really comes out with this track in the whole vibe of it. Cool. So once again, the chords are B flat minor 7th, D sharp dominant 7th, then we have a G sharp major 7, then we go to our 1 chord finally, a C sharp major 7. Notice all of these chords are 7ths, and then finally we get one more chord that's not really in our key because we find that note G. Again, this is going to be a C minor 7 or a B sharp minor 7th if we call it that scale degree. So technically in the natural chord for minor on a 7 would be a major chord. So this is minor, so that is not in our key. I'm going to define this as being from the same scale G major or G sharp major as this chord was. So we could call that a 3 of 5. So if I were doing a harmonic analysis, and a harmonic analysis is a fancy way of saying thinking about what chords they are relative to the key instead of literally what chords they are, we could call this a minor 6. We could call this a 5 of 5. If you see a harmonic chart, that would look like a Roman numeral 5 and then a like a hyphen or over another 5. So 5 of 5. Then we're going to our 5 chord, but a major 7. So we get some changes in there. So I realize one, we'll get to the end of it. I made a slight mistake just now when I was talking about that. So minor 6, 5 of 5, 5, major 7, 1, then 3 of 5, and we repeat. The one thing I want to mention is that I said in minor keys, we're in a major key. So in major keys, this 7th scale degree is typically a diminished chord. So if we were to look at C major, we C, D, E, F, G, A, B. That B, if you go B, D, F on the keyboard, skipping scale degrees, that's going to be a B diminished chord. So we don't find the diminished chord, so it's still borrowed from the same spot. I just wanted to address that slight mistake. Cool, let's go ahead into the full track. I'll start with the simplest part. What we just saw, it's the same chords on the pad. The one difference is we have our rhythm in here. We have some syncopation where the chord, we get that minor 6 for the full first measure. Then we go along into the second part of our second measure. So let's get this back to a 16th note groove. All right, cool. So first chord happens on the 1. The next chord happens on the 3rd 16th note, 1, 2, 3, or the 4th 16th note after beat 1. Then on our measure 3, we start with that G sharp major 7. That's on the 1. We get to our 1 chord, our C sharp major 7, a 16th note early, right there. And then finally we get that B minor 7th or C sharp or B sharp minor 7th. It's confusing when you're talking about these enharmonics, but it does help with our sight reading, which is why we have that rule in the way we talk about music. Cool, so let's hear that pad chord progression. there's obviously a lot of movement on the pad. One additional thing I'm doing is I'm raising this EQ top shelf right here. So as the song starts, the pad is cut out. And then this is going to start to increase. There you see it. That, again, makes it sound like the song. It makes it so that the actual instrumental is getting louder or becoming more audible after the intro. So it kind of like highlights the introduction. Cool. Then we have our top end melody. This is the main melody that we hear. It's an arpeggio or part arpeggio of the same exact chord progression on the same harmonic motion for the most part. So we have our B flat or our A sharp. So this six, this is that sixth chord, our minor six, that is going basically 1 5 1 5 1 5, and then it goes down to our D sharp. So 1 5 1 5 1 5 1 4 in that A sharp. That's basically a passing tone walking down to this B sharp. That so the notes are A sharp, F, A sharp, F, A sharp. Sorry, one more time. A sharp, E sharp, A sharp, E sharp. If we're using the proper name of those notes. Then we step down. We're at D sharp down to B sharp. Then this is where we're at the G sharp major chord. We do the same arpeggio pattern, 1 5 1 5 1 5. Cool. Then we get to our actual 1 chord, and we are hearing a major 7 happening, and in essence, this B flat on the bottom this B flat is not actually in our chord. The chord that we're having right there is the C sharp major chord. So we have C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, and B sharp, right? So when we add this, basically this note in, that makes this chord a sixth. So that's adding an additional harmony. That again adds to the sort of jazzy nature of the song. In jazz music, the reason it sounds dissonant to our ears, or the people who listen to a lot of this popular music all the time, not like this one, but more typical popular music, will, when they listen to jazz, feel like it's really dissonant. Dissonant's a fancy way of saying like clashing. In essence, we have more allowable harmonies in jazz music. So we have extended chords. If you get my music theory text linked below, I talk about those extended jazz chords. So like minor ninths, as popular musicians might call it, like a suspended second, 13ths, 11s, all of these different added notes are very jazzy. So altogether, our pad and our top end lead sound like this. Cool. Now, this main lead sounds very guitar-esque to me. I did this on a virtual controlled guitar, Strum Sessions. This came with my Korg Op 6. I've done some videos with that cool little synthesizer I've added to the arsenal. An interesting thing is the final part of this progression, we're doing the top part of these chords. So we get the C sharp, E sharp, G sharp. That's our 1, our major chord. Then we go up to what is basically a major 2, or this is that 5 of 5. Those are the top 3 notes. The full harmony has that C added below it, which makes this whole chord a minor 7th. Without that bottom note, it's the typical 5 chord that we saw. Cool. One of the main things that I wanted to talk about with this song, this doesn't really fall into our music theory in terms of the different notes we hear, but in terms of sound design, we're hearing a bunch of different sort of ensemble phasing chorus effects. I'm using Guitar Rig and Maserati guitar by Waves. And then on my other sound that is the other portion of that lead tone, I have this ring shifter and some EQ. Cool. So this, we just have to talk about the bass and the drums, and that'll give us all of the different notes that we need. Having some mic stand issues right now. Been recording a bunch of different stuff, not just my vocals here. So let's look at the bass. This bass instrument has a B flat or A sharp or 6. Cool. So for the most part, we get the root notes. We're playing that A sharp. That's the low note from the chord. We hit this D sharp. That's kind of foreshadowing the notes that are coming up. Technically, we have this note, our C sharp, in that chord, as well as our E sharp. So this note is not in the chord. But again, we find that in our guitar arpeggio. That makes this harmony kind of like a minor 11. So that, again, adds to the jazzy elements. Let's listen to this while we watch it. Here it is. Cool. One interesting element, the one additional notes we're not playing root notes of, is we play our D sharp. That's our 5th note, or it's still in our chord, but that's our 5th in the chord. And then finally going up to our E sharp there. That is let's check the chord. I don't want to be wrong on that. Our D sharp is the 2nd note or the 3rd of our chord that's happening. So again, this song, like, one of the really cool elements of it is that we're getting this really interesting harmonic progression. All of these notes that are slightly different choices than we would use from if this was as typical of a pop song as possible. These like different notes, not using the root note, adding a note that's not in our chord of the moment but's in our key, in the bass, all of that goes a long way to make this feel as vibey as it does. Cool. So then finally we get our drums that come in. So our drum section starts out with just some hi-hats going on steady 8th notes. I should mention that, first of all, 16th notes on the drums. I'm at 111 beats per minute. That is a pretty slow tempo, if you will. So right there we get our snare and our open hi-hat twice, bump, bump. That happens on 1, 2, on 3, 4. So the quarter notes, it's really just a pickup into our drum section. Cool. Then when we get into what is the drop, our drums are basically doing a standard backbeat. So kick on 1, snare on 2. Let's go back to a 16th note groove. So kick on 1, closed hi-hat on the 2nd 8th note, snare on 2, closed hi-hat on the next 8th note, kick on beat 3. Awesome. So this is the drum kit, and then I have sample drums going as well. So our main kick drum is down here. We've got 4 on the floor, so the kick's happening on every quarter note. This snare is doubling up the standard backbeat that I just showed you. And all of that sounds like this. Cool. One additional thing I wanted to talk about, or layer that I just glanced over, is this, I'm calling it the weird ambient pitched percussion. And what this is basically a patch that has a lot of movement in it already. I'm using an Arturia patch. It is happening on our 2nd note. So that's kind of interesting because this is different than the 1. So from that pitch, it makes it like a major 9 chord, fancy way of saying adding the second note to our harmony. And if you listen to the original, which I encourage everyone, anytime you hear one of these or watch one of these music theory breakdowns, go and listen to the original and try to hear the different layers that I'm talking about. 1, it verifies that I'm doing this right. Let me know if you hear anything off. But then 2, it also helps you to tune your ear or to listen to things in the song that may have gotten by you before. And one thing you'll notice is that throughout the song, it's pretty hot in the mix as well. We get this bell sounding thing that, again, I'm calling weird ambient pitched percussion. If I play this, which doesn't sound very cool on its own, but if we go back to our full section, that does a lot to fill in the whole texture. All right, finally we've got these this real bass and this real guitar that I just I recorded. So the bass is fundamentally doing the same notes that it was doing before. It's doing even more root notes, slight fill in. So we're doing our 6th note. Cool. So unlike the intro, the bass follows the root notes again. So we're doing that C sharp, B sharp, or C. This is going with our A sharp up to, in essence, the 5 of 5. That D sharp, we hit, it goes E sharp, D sharp, so there's a little pickup into it, but other than that, just the root note. Then finally, we're playing the G sharp down here. We get up to our C sharp, our 1, play it multiple times, but doing the same note. That bass with our drum kit sounds like this. Cool. Now this song has a real like vibe to it. The bass, I would bet, is played by some sort of session player extraordinaire. Bass feels really good and vibey. It doesn't feel like perfect, but it feels like just right. That may seem contradictory, but by perfect I don't mean it doesn't feel like dry, like a computer's playing it flawlessly. It feels like there's a lot of touch to it. So again, that's why I played the actual bass guitar. Finally, I added this guitar layer in. This is another thing like our pitched percussion that I didn't really hear in the original song, but is definitely an element that takes it the extra distance. It sounds like this. And literally all that is, if I pick up my guitar, I'm playing a syncopated rhythm on, that's a G sharp. And then we go up to our A sharp. So 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5. And that's literally all that's happening on the guitar. This is very funk influenced. I feel like that's the genre of music that I became comfortable playing, like one chord or one note, but more interesting pattern in the right hand. So again, that feels very human. I would expect that guitar is a fully alive thing. I would have done that for our intro, but I feel like I got the lead closer than I thought I could originally, and so much of that's tone driven that's why I kept that MIDI. Cool, let's hear our entire track from the beginning one more time and listen for all these elements. I hope you found this helpful. You'd help me out a ton by subscribing to the channel. Here it is. pitch percussion and drums. Bell thing. Nice. I'm going to go ahead and stop it there because it just keeps repeating. The final thing I'll say is that the mix of that original song, not my mix, but the original song sounds huge, sounds really tight. I would like my mix to be on that level, but again, since I don't have the copyright for this and don't know how many of you are going to watch this video, the mix, I just got it as good as I was close as I could in a reasonable amount of time. One element that is really important for mixing anything that's like house music influenced is some sort of sidechain feel, or basically, since our kick drum has so much subs and our bass has subs in it, we don't want those subs happening at the same time, because if they're not in phase, they're just going to sound muddy, and it's possible that we'll even cancel out some low end if it is giving some phase cancellation. So by using this LFO tool by Extra Records, same company, Steve Duda's company that makes Serum, super useful tool. I believe it's free, at least if you have Serum. This line is the volume, so the volume of the bass is softer in the beginning, and then it gets louder. It's pretty fast rhythm in reality, so you don't notice it as much when I'm playing everything together. It just creates space for this kick drum. So hopefully that helps you. If you found this music theory breakdown helpful, you would help me a ton by subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Tell your friends. I hope you have a lot of fun with these. Remember, music isn't really about rules. All this theory stuff just helps you to better understand the music you like, what you're making, how to figure out additional elements, or how to get your music on the level of what you're trying to get it to. So remember, have fun, be kind to your fellow human being, and I will see you next time. Cheers, and thanks for hanging out with me.